back to another MetLife TTX Talks, our series that showcases informative and empowering conversations with inspirational leaders in STEM. My name is Katie Linendahl, and I'm happy to be partnering with the MetLife team to host these dynamic conversations. And today we are joined by Dr. Jessica Wade. Jessica is a physicist at Imperial College London who's on a mission to make women in science more visible online. In this talk, Jessica discusses how her personal experiences as a woman in STEM led her to begin writing biographies on Wikipedia about women researchers who were lacking online presence. She also shares her thoughts around the role educators and school systems play in ensuring STEM for all. Well, let's get started. Welcome Dr. Jessica Wade in a discussion with Angelo Mitsopoulos, Head of Process and Service Excellence Operations at MetLife. Angelo, take it away.
Thanks, Katie, and thanks, Jess, for joining us today on the TTX conversation. So you're a physicist at Imperial College in London.
I am a physicist.
In addition to in addition to that, you've made a significant number of contributions to the world of STEM, and so we're really excited to have you with us today. And so, what inspired you to get involved with STEM?
Yeah, fantastic question. Great to have a chat. So I started being excited about science, I guess, when I was at school. I had parents, both of whom were medical doctors. My mum is a psychiatrist and my dad's a neurologist. So I always had that kind of energy and enthusiasm to understand the world, but also that drive to want to do some good with that. So, whether that be working in a hospital or working in a university or coming up with new kinds of materials to make better solar panels. So I got really excited at school about that kind of thing as a job. And then I just had absolutely fantastic teachers. So I was super lucky to have an amazing chemistry teacher and an amazing physics teacher, both of whom kind of inspired me to think outside the curriculum and then keep asking those really big questions about, the incredibly small and things like atoms and molecules, or the massively astronomically massive things like galaxies. So it was that kind of curiosity and that support from my parents and that inspiration that you could do a job that keeps you asking questions, that keeps you learning things about the world, but ultimately lets you help other people as well.
Can you just talk a little bit about the role that's played in not just things that you've done, but also the way you see and think about the world and others?
Yeah, sure. It's like the way that we educate and train young people now is very much to tell them they're either an artist or a kind of math science type person. You're either in this literary world or you're in this kind of hard technical world. When actually I think the intersection of the two is often where the most exciting and creative and disruptive ideas happen. Before I actually started studying physics at university, I went to art school. I lived in Italy and I did this kind of beautiful course on the Renaissance and history of art in Italian. And there you're really struck with the fact that artists and architects were people who could do metalwork, they could do woodwork, they could do this phenomenal architecture, they had a great sense of perspective, but they could also have this really precise understanding of anatomy. They could start to understand things like how we could harness electricity to power all of the different gadgets and gizmos that we want in the world. So we never used to have this really distinct separation between these subjects anymore. And I think, I was encouraged by my parents and certainly also by my school to just keep doing the things that I found really inspired me and kept my mind open.
So you've touched in and out on your experience with sort of the educational system. And I know it's had a big impact on you as a person and also what you've become. So can you just talk a little bit about, the role that you see education plays in the advancement of STEM and particularly the advancement of women in STEM?
When I was growing up, I have a little brother who's also now a medical doctor. And we spent a long time kind of making potions in the bathroom or doing, a lot of kitchen chemistry, i.e. baking, but doing all these experiments, which I think made my mother quite terrified. We were going to spill things everywhere, but actually let us do that whole thing around discovery and just play and working things out and learning. So I think certainly when you're really little, just having that opportunity and that kind of confidence boost to discover things and to learn things yourself and to know, knock over a pile of bricks and get that experience of gravity or something like that. So I think we do need that kind of opportunity to discover, to do things that are really disruptive, to make mistakes, to learn things in these, experimental ways that are so important for being inspired early on in science. But then you do need that technical learning to come in. And we particularly, I think, need to do the education, not just for the kids, but also for the teachers and parents about the different types of jobs you can have. Parents are huge influencers on young people's perceptions of anything and young people's decisions about what they'll do with their own future. So I think we need to get everyone on board with this message that science is incredibly exciting. So we need a whole new generation of science enthusiasts and also scientifically literate people to help uncover and discover these things. So yeah, education is key. Keeping options open as long as possible is really, really key. And doing that kind of support and training for parents and teachers as well will be kind of massively important.
Girls will often get drop out at a very high rate as they progress through adolescence, and as society starts to define the stereotypes and the boxes that they need to operate in, and they sort of start to self-select their way out of that path, even though maybe it may be something that they're really talented at and that they really enjoy, but they feel like they perhaps shouldn't for whatever given reason. As someone who, has blazed their way through that wall, what advice would you give, not just the adults, but, the children who are in that position? How do they work through that? And what can we do to minimize that impact?
Yeah, I think it's kind of rubbish that society still has these ridiculous stereotypes that hold all different kinds of young people back, but particularly in subjects like physics and computing, it's holding little girls and young women back from the huge opportunity that they could have for these extraordinary careers, and also for this kind of super cool understanding. Who doesn't like looking out of a telescope and being able to explain great facts about the solar system? I think it's the most awesome thing ever. Whether that's creating incredible music, whether that's absolutely amazing things that you can do if you design a better solar panel, whether that's helping people and you want to design new medicines, or maybe you want to come up with more clever ways to do a particular kind of medical treatment. And lots of those, actually pretty much all of those, are underpinned by physics, actually. I would find that thing that you're passionate about, find people who do that thing, maybe read some stuff about it on the internet. You could look things up on kind of watching videos online if you feel like you're not getting enough support from your school or you can't find that information out. There's so many fantastic educators on the kind of education part of YouTube and things like that. So I'd find that thing you're enthusiastic about, find a way in, speak to people. If you're super curious and you think, I really want to go and study medical imaging, you could write to a professor and say, I'd really love to have a chat about it. Sometimes that's like the most heartwarming thing you can receive when you're a lecturer, is an email from some young person who's trying to make up their mind. But I would try and get as much information as possible, and then use that information as a motivation for saying, I'm just going to sit here and pursue it. I know I'm going into a classroom where it's going to be mainly boys, or I'm going into a classroom where the teacher might look at me differently because I don't look like or sound like everyone else. Or I'm going in here and sometimes I don't feel as confident in here as I do in my other classes. But actually working through that, being able to overcome those challenges, is going to make you a more tough and a more resilient person, so you can go out into those jobs and have these extraordinary opportunities and doors open for you. I think something I kind of think about a lot with girls and young women is they're so able, they're so capable, they mature a little bit faster than boys. So often by the time that it comes to making these really big life decisions or pursuing these different kinds of subjects at middle school and then high school, they've grown up a little bit faster. And they're often really brilliant at a whole range of different things. They're fantastic at drama, they're great at modern languages, they're really fantastic at history, but then they're fantastic at maths, and they're brilliant at physics, and they're extraordinary at computer science. But because they're so good at all of those things, and because society is saying, no, this is what you're like, these are the dolls you play with, this is what you do on the weekend, this is what TikTok and Snapchat says that you should care about, you start to think, oh, okay, I'll just do that. My teacher says I'm not very good at this. My teacher says it's just for boys. Even though I love that thing, I'll just do this thing that society says to me to do. When actually it is the most satisfying thing in the entire world when you take on a challenge that you sometimes don't believe that you can do, that your teachers don't believe that you can do, and you do it anyway and you're extraordinary at it. So I think when girls are presented with this huge range of options, because they are so brilliant young, they should choose the ones that they know they're going to get that kind of sense of, wow, I've really put my all into this and it really paid off. And that's what I'd really, really try and champion and believe.
I would also like to get your thought on the role that male role models can play in, in this whole discussion. So, for example, what can dads do for their, for their daughters, just to help normalize, and sort of combat the external factors that they might hear, right? So,
Yeah, I think all parents can do it. So doing your work around it, reading about these experiences that people might be facing, doing your work around things that could also make it better. So maybe it's a different type of book, maybe it's some after school classes that you could go to, maybe it is a really, really fantastic easy introduction to science that you can watch and do together. I think having parents or carers who are enthusiastic about science and curious about science and technology and show fantastic or discuss fantastic role models. But there are so many great examples of incredible scientists and engineers, and just kind of bringing it up at the kitchen table, or when you're in the car, or when you're on the bus on the way to school, saying like, we've just had this great rocket launch and here are some awesome people who've done it. So just having that kind of bubbling over energy and enthusiasm of science, and never, something I'm quite passionate about, is not explicitly saying, we need more girls in science, or you should care about this because you're a girl. But it's just showing, it's that kind of positive reinforcement that there are these people who have the same value structure as you, who look like you, who may have had the same experiences as you, and this is the great things that they're doing. And I think when you do that and you lead through people's curiosity and you make sure they have great access to education if you can get it, and if you can't get it in your district, then making sure you use the phenomenal resources online. I think that's when we unlock really, really great opportunity.
Yeah, I think, and something we try to do in our house too is just normalize it, right? It's not something you should do just because. It's something that everyone can do, and why not you, right? So you've actually taken a bit of a crusade of your own. While we're on the subject, you have written a tremendous number of Wikipedia pages to sort of highlight these figures, and I just really interested to understand sort of how you came down that journey. Maybe starting with sort of how you identified the problem, the gross deficiency that you identified. I learned about as I was doing a little bit of research about you, but better for you to tell the story than me to the audience. To share a little bit about sort of how you stumbled upon this opportunity and how you've taken it by the horns.
Yeah, I'm grateful to you for asking about it. It's been a little crusade and a project of mine since like the beginning of 2017. I often think that the way that you kind of get people to remember something, or whether that's a kind of fundamental scientific law or some kind of concept or whatever, is through the people. We learn by people actually. And then kind of a few remarkable things happened at the same time. So you'll all remember when the most incredible film of 2017 came out, but that movie Hidden Figures. So that was the kind of movie about the African-American mathematicians that underpinned human spaceflight at NASA, the kind of Katherine Johnson and Dorothy Vaughan and Mary Jackson. And this movie, which came out with 21st Century Fox, kind of took the world by storm. And then the US State Department made this International Visitor Leadership Program called an IVLP, called Hidden No More. And in that year, which was the first year it happened, they selected 50 women from 50 countries, and I was the UK, and they took us on this tour around America and introduced us to these sensational professors and academics and industry and all of these opportunities and all of these initiatives to promote and support women scientists and to promote people from all different kinds of historically excluded groups. So you had this great movie. I got taken on this absolutely incredible program. And the two things clicked to me, that I would meet these fantastic women, these extraordinary pioneers, these kind of, medical leaders, these extraordinary experts in physics or engineering. And I would look them up on my favorite search engine. And every single time I looked them up, they wouldn't be on Wikipedia. And so that started really frustrating me. I was going to conferences, I was meeting these incredible people, I was reading textbooks, I was reading research papers. So I knew that these fantastic people existed. It's just when you Googled them, they actually on this incredibly important platform. And I kind of also started learning about just how important Wikipedia is. It's this hugely interactive, dynamic, democratized platform for knowledge sharing. It really opens the opportunity to everyone in 300 different languages all over the world to get access to information, and access to information in a way without jargon, without paywalls, with easy to understand diagrams and language. So I just started thinking Wikipedia is important. It influences how people perceive a subject. It influences what we understand about a subject. It influences who journalists book when they're about to go on air. It influences lawyers' decisions and medical decisions. Every single aspect of life uses, every single one on planet Earth probably, in all different careers and ages, uses Wikipedia. I knew that women were underrepresented on there. I didn't know quite how bad. When I started this project, women were about 17%, so 17% of the biographies on English language Wikipedia, which is absurd. That's not just women scientists, that's just women. So despite being 51% of the global population, we were 17% of who was deemed notable. And so I just started at the beginning of 2018 writing these Wikipedia biographies every single day. So I just love the ease and the simplicity of this project on Wikipedia. If everyone uses it, we all have a responsibility to make the information on there as up to date and as correct as it could be. It's our record of what's going on in the world.
I read online that you haven't read your own Wikipedia page. Is that actually true?
I can't. I find anything to do with me, I find horrifically embarrassing. I actually can't read emails. If they're being generous or kind to me, I have to get someone else to read the email and then tell me what it says. So I know that my Wikipedia page says who my mum is and not who my dad is, which is a cause of upset for my father, but my mother is a phenomenal woman.
Well, I've read it. It's pretty cool. And I would encourage others to read it as well. Maybe before we bring it home, just a couple of maybe some fun, just a little lightning round for people just to get to know you a little bit better before we go away. What's your proudest accomplishment so far?
I think my proudest accomplishment is actually the Wikipedia page of this amazing African-American mathematician called Gladys West, Dr. Gladys West. She did the calculations that enabled GPS, so kind of satellite navigation technology that we use for all math. She's kind of in her mid-90s now, but is finally getting the recognition and the honoring that she deserves. She was inducted to the US Air Force Hall of Fame at the age of 91 and then won this huge prize from the Royal Academy of Engineering. And, of all the things I've done scientifically or everything I've achieved in kind of education, actually seeing this amazing woman get this credit for maths that she did in the 60s and 70s is just, it's been definitely my proudest achievement.
We should all send her a thank you letter because she has made all of our lives remarkably easier. Other than her, who's someone that you would encourage all of us to learn more about?
I think probably, the person who's been the biggest trailblazer and influence on my life is my mother, who's a phenomenal psychiatrist called Dr. Charlotte Feynman, who actually did loads of really cool research in kind of facial pain and placebo in the early days of psychiatric risk. Well, not early days, I shouldn't date her too much, she's not that old. But certainly my mother is a huge inspiration for me. And then my head of department is an incredible woman called Professor Sandrine Hoyts, who works on kind of molecular materials to control spins in spintronic and quantum technologies. And she's completely changed my life. So yeah, my mother, Charlotte Feynman, and Sandrine Hoyts.
Super cool. You have a favorite quote?
I think my favorite quote is Toni Morrison, the US laureate, who says, the US laureate, the Nobel laureate for literature, the American Nobel laureate for literature, who says, she was speaking about talking to her students. And I think of this a lot in advocacy, that you can feel very small and like you can't affect anything. And I've got to remember it now. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else. And that's what I feel a lot. It's like whatever opportunity you have, your job is to try and take that and pay that forward.
That's cool. I think you've proven that you're living it. Any parting advice for women, girls in STEM that you would want to give?
I think my parting advice is to just have fun with it. That sometimes these jobs feel incredibly complicated and overwhelming, but actually the opportunity, the discovery, that sense of just huge creativity and kind of that rush when you learn something for the first time, it's such an incredible experience. So have fun, enjoy it. if you need help, ask for help. So many people around you want to help, whether you find them on the internet or in your lab or in your university or in your high school, and you'll find that voice, that trusted voice that you can go to and ask for help when you need it. But just have fun, because this is just the coolest job in the entire world.
Dr. Jess Wade, thank you so much for everything that you're doing to move women forward in STEM. And especially thank you for sharing your story with us here today at TTX. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you and celebrating some of the really cool things you're doing to move us forward. So thank you again very much.
Thanks so much, Angelo. Thanks for having me.
Well, what an amazing conversation. Thank you, Angelo, for moderating, and thank you, Dr. Wade, for inspiring us all with your stories. If you've missed any of MetLife's TTX Talks, head on over to MetLife's YouTube channel to stay up to date. And reminder, you can also get involved in this conversation by joining our TTX LinkedIn group for the latest trends, updates, and highlights on advancing women in STEM. Thank you all for being with us for this discussion, and we look forward to seeing you again for our next TTX Talks.